Welcome back. Regional Plan Association has released 4 long-range plans to guide the growth and development of the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut metropolitan area. These efforts have shaped and improved the region's economic health, environmental sustainability, and the quality of life. We are now joined by the Vice President of Transportation for Regional Plan Association, Tiffany-Ann Taylor. Tiffany, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Jonathan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, now, of course, I mentioned a little bit about the plan for RPA. Talk to me about the Regional Plan Association and its mission as well.
Sure. So Regional Plan Association, or much shorter way of calling us, is RPA. So RPA is over 100 years old, if you can believe it. We are a nonpartisan civic nonprofit that is well known for both our research and our advocacy in a few areas. One being transportation, another being energy and environment, and the third being housing and community development. And as you mentioned, we're most known for our regional plans that we put out approximately once every 25 years. The last one, the most recent one, was released in 2017, and that's really our long-range guide to how do we make sure in those areas that I mentioned, our region is growing towards health, prosperity, sustainability, and in an equitable way.
Yeah, now, of course, I know we are going to break a little bit more down those different kind of aspects that RPA does work on. But I do want to start off with, how does the work that you do address the challenges of urban planning, obviously in such a densely populated region like New York City?
Sure, sure. So we are, as I mentioned, mostly known for our research and our advocacy. And a lot of our research, we ask some of the big questions, whether it's about governance, like should our transportation system be managed in the way that it should be, whether it's around policy, it could be related to economic development or maybe even housing. Are we building enough housing for folks to support our region? And what does employment look like in this region as well? And also, what are the environmental concerns that we should be very concerned with? And we do that through, after we've created our original research, it supports our formal advocacy campaigns. And for us at RPA, advocacy can look like a bunch of things, both publicly and privately behind closed doors. So a few examples, more public, would be holding press conferences or rallies, being on television, perhaps submitting op-eds for local newspapers as well. And then we do also what I call closed door diplomacy, not to sound secretive, but sometimes, big agencies or maybe even elected officials might not see eye to eye on an important project or conversation, and they need to. And because we are nonpartisan, we may intervene, we may step in and offer to kind of play Switzerland in a way, in a neutral way, to make sure that folks are really moving in the right direction.
Yeah, now, of course, with the work that you mentioned, you talk about also the environmental challenges at that. What are some of the, obviously, challenges that you're seeing that RPA is working on to address in our region?
Sure. So a big thing actually is offshore wind. So we need to be, and I would say really offshore wind and just the advancements of alternative fuels in general. And so why alternative? So we have, as a nation, as a globe, a heavy dependency on fossil fuels. And so we need to be thinking about ways to reduce that dependency, because we now know through science that is harming our atmosphere, our environment, and unfortunately we're seeing it in terms of our public health across the globe. So one of the ways to reduce that is to think about alternative ways to fuel the things that move, right? How to fuel planes or cars, bikes, trucks, for example. So there's a couple of options. One of the ways that you could generate power is through offshore wind. So this region, really the New York, New Jersey area, that harbor, if you will, is essentially a gold mine for wind. And so we are a supportive advocacy group in trying to make sure that offshore wind production can happen. It's not just for energy production for our environment, but it's also an opportunity to build a new job market, right? Maybe part of the introduction of what folks know as green jobs, green as in more sustainable, and also just sponsoring other elements of the transportation network as well.
Yeah, obviously with these strategies like the offshore wind, or just even the different kind of tackles that you kind of work on, as you know, our population is made of so many different people, and you are working with the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. Yeah. How do you make sure that your plans and your strategies are very inclusive of our diverse populations?
Yeah, I think quite honestly, it starts with staff. Making sure that folks come from a varied sense of backgrounds, both geographically, education-wise, bringing a different level of expertise expertise to that. Also making sure that our language is both accessible and also inclusive. Essentially doing a check on ourselves, like, is this something that perhaps that we've written might, folks might take offense to, or are we excluding a group unintentionally, and double checking that. And then also definitely making sure that our coalition partners on any campaign that we work with also is more inclusive. So in the transportation space, yes, I work directly with the agencies like MTA or New York City Department of Transportation, or even at the federal level, federal U.S. Department of Transportation, but also very much so we work with grassroots organizations like Riders Alliance, Tri-State Transportation Campaign, Transportation Alternatives, New York Lawyers for Public Interest, and they are a very large disability advocates group. We want to make sure that our collaborations on the ground represent diversity as well, and that's a way that we make sure that we have equitable access and more diversity in our work.
Yeah, now you also mentioned the MTA. Something that we've been seeing obviously on the headlines and over these past few months has been congestion pricing that has been on the rise. Now, obviously RPA has been an advocate for congestion pricing for decades. It's not something that's new, according to the website and what I've been reading.
Yeah.
With that, talk to me about why has it been important for RPA to be behind this initiative for decades?
Yeah, so it speaks a lot to some of the questions that you just asked me, especially about our environment, right? So if we understand that transportation as a sector, right, so that includes, you and me driving our cars, that includes the trucks that brought our bananas and our apples to the supermarket, and other aspects of the industry, those are large contributors to greenhouse gases, which we know harm our environment. And so if we start to think about what are some of the larger chunks that we can chip away at to reduce that harm, congestion pricing provides an opportunity, right? Because it's a large scale initiative. So through congestion pricing, you are charging folks entering in and out of a specific zone to deter them or disincentivize them from driving in. And instead, you want folks to really rely on public transportation or other modes that aren't reliant on fossil fuels, maybe by bike or perhaps by scooter. And so that's a reason why, as a policy, congestion pricing has been something that the RPA has been a long-time supporter of. We've seen it take place in other parts of the world. London is probably our most similar example, given the relationship with New York City, to its age and its size, but also in Singapore, Stockholm, Milan. There's lots of other examples. And so we've known for a long time that the United States can benefit from it, and the New York City metropolitan area is a great place for it to start.
Yeah, now, of course, as a RPA who has been advocating for congestion pricing and having you as an expert here with us, I mean, I have to ask you, what are you seeing as a result of the first few months of New York City having congestion pricing? Any benefits, or what can you give us about what we're seeing?
I have seen quite a bit. I hope you're writing this down.
Yeah.
So we've seen benefits across the board. The number one thing is, has congestion gone down? Yes. We have seen traffic reduction. We've seen less cars and trucks enter into the congestion pricing zone. Other metrics, right? We've seen increases in bus speeds. That's really important, right? So if you have less traffic, less congestion, so buses that typically are slow, specifically in Manhattan, are going faster. We're seeing, especially with express bus service to and from Manhattan, those buses actually seem to be moving the fastest. In some instances, people are seeing upwards of 20 minutes taken off of their time, their commute time, and that's more time to spend at home or on other important, trips throughout the day. We're also seeing an increase in economic activity, especially in places like Broadway, Times Square, where we are seeing folks traveling in and purchasing more tickets to see shows, despite the fact that we are seeing less traffic. And we're also, right now, we're still monitoring what air quality improvements look like. That will take a little bit more time, but I think right now we're hopeful that there's a promise to that. So there's lots of benefits that we're seeing. Oh, and of course the revenue, how can I forget? So the MTA so far since January 5th, which was the first day of congestion pricing, has brought in upwards of $100 million, so about $50 million each month. And that money, all of the money for the congestion pricing program, every bit of that revenue is dedicated only to the MTA's capital plan. And so for your audience, the capital plan is the part of the program where the MTA figures out how to build stations, how to fix and upgrade elevators, how to expand projects, things like adding the Interborough Express. That's very different from the operational budget, which is where most of your money goes when you tap your Omni card or if you're still using a Metro card.
Yeah, now, of course, Tiffany, you have given us, I think, like a very detailed breakdown in that sense of just, obviously, one thing is us experiencing it and seeing it, like you mentioned, like less traffic and whatnot, but to actually hear how that revenue even is going to be used or where it's being applied to. With that, I mean, it's also been on the headlines that the Trump administration has called for halting, an extended deadline in a sense for halting congestion pricing. The U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy even mentioned that it was kind of unethical charging working class citizens to use roads their tax dollars already paid to build. When you hear this potential about halting congestion pricing, what are your thoughts and should we be worried?
Being worried, that one's a hard one because it depends on where you are on the matter. But overall, I think it's actually very disappointing that we're hearing from the federal government. Quite honestly, it's a different administration, yes, but it is the same legal entity, the same federal government that approved the program only a few months ago. So it is disappointing to hear that a program that is showing all those benefits that I just mentioned and it's creating a dedicated revenue source for public transportation, that the current US DOT secretary and the federal administration are not looking to really continue to support that. And so it's really unfortunate that that's where we are. But as I mentioned, there's lots of benefits that we're seeing. And in terms of should people, be afraid, I would say right now, perhaps not. So a couple of things that have happened. As you mentioned, an executive order came down from Secretary Duffy. And then a week or so ago, there was a message sent via social media from Secretary Duffy also to Governor Hochul. But to date, we haven't seen any legal action. We haven't seen any judge create a ruling or explain that the MTA should stop what they're doing. And so right now, without that, the program still continues and the cameras will remain on. So I think right now, folks don't necessarily need to worry that the program will be stopped.
Definitely, and I know it is obviously a continued conversation, like you mentioned. Now social media is involved, so we are obviously staying tuned and keeping up to date with the latest. With that, Tiffany, thank you so much for being here with us today and explaining just congestion pricing and other initiatives that you're working on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. With that, of course, we've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, of course, the viewers, for tuning in. If you've missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recable cast at 5 and 8 p.m. tonight on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios 33, or watch anytime on the website at BronxNet.org. You can catch a brand new episode of Open with Darren Jaime on Wednesday and with Rina Valentin on Friday. I'm Jonathan Calixto. Stay informed, stay inspired, and stay safe. Until next time. Thank you.